That statement could not be further from what I'm hearing from farmers and from families all across Georgia. Georgia farmers are telling me that they continue to struggle with high costs exacerbated by President Trump's war in Iran and his tariffs, which is a tax on all of us on virtually everything. Secretary Rollins, last week the administration did lower its tariffs on farm equipment by 10%. I think that's a good move. It's a start. I'm afraid that it might be a little too late and a bit too little. Was this action an acknowledgement by the Trump administration that its tariffs have increased the cost of farming?
So I really appreciate the question. I think the president, as our chief negotiator, is constantly tweaking. But what I will say, and I realize you and I could have a much longer conversation about this, that the very tariffs that you're speaking of have instituted or led to the 19 new trade deals that we've implemented. We're going to have higher corn exports, higher ethanol exports, higher tree nut exports, higher dairy exports than practically in American history. So we're cutting that $50 billion agricultural trade deficit in half that we inherited a year and a half ago. And for the farmers, nothing's more important than that market access.
But has it increased the cost of farming? You're forecasting what you think will be the result. But has it increased the cost of farming?
Well, again, the cost of fertilizer was up almost 100% in the what we inherited. The cost of doing business, on average, I won't go through all the numbers. We don't have time, but on average, what we inherited was a 50% input cost. So we brought all of that down. As to the farm equipment, I think the president is very focused on what can we do to get our farmers to profitability. It's a national security issue. So if by removing certain barriers, we can bring down the cost just a little bit, then that's a big win for everyone. What he has said, though, is that what he doesn't want to see happening is the equipment manufacturers pocketing that extra dollar, which a lot argued would actually be the result, that the farmers themselves would not see it. So as part of that announcement, it was to make sure the farmers got that benefit, not the big equipment guys.
So according to Farm Policy News, the president's tariffs have increased input costs by $1 billion for farmers, while erasing billions in access to export markets that you're saying are going to come online if farmers just hold on a little while longer.
Online.
But they're struggling. They are struggling right now. There's no question about it. I talk to them all the time. Since the Supreme Court struck down the president's illegal tariffs, giant corporations have lined up to receive tariff refunds. Madam Secretary, are you pushing in cabinet meetings for farmers to also be reimbursed for the billions in tariffs?
The price of coffee increased by 35%. The shopping cart gets a little heavier every month. 4.3 million Americans were removed from food assistance. $500 million in food bank support was cut. And the official response from the Minister of Agriculture to the situation? This is because of the Biden administration. On the morning of Wednesday, June 11, 2026, when Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said this sentence during a Senate Agriculture Committee oversight hearing, Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock paused at the podium. There was a moment of silence. Then he asked, "Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, are you aware of how sterile, how empty, how out of touch this answer is for someone in Georgia trying to shop at the grocery store, unable to pay their bills? 2 years later, still the Biden administration? Is this your answer?" Rollins went on the defensive. He counted the averages. He listed the 3s and 3.2s. The numbers were on the table, but Warnock's question was not about the numbers, it was about the truth itself, and this truth completely changed the atmosphere of the hall. If you don't want to miss such analyses, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Let's return to the stage. Background: Rollins found the Senate much easier. The real dramatic context of this hearing began a week earlier. On June 4, 2026, Rollins attended a House Agriculture Committee hearing. That session was extremely tough. Democrats grilled him on glyphosate safety, SNAP cuts, and farmers' income losses. Committee members clearly stated that the Trump administration has been in power long enough and that farmers should now be held accountable for the current issues. A week later, before the Senate hearing, Rollins told attendees at an industry meeting that he had planned to speak on 5 topics, but would actually prefer to speak on 50 topics and not go to the Senate Agriculture Committee. That was a very clear statement. The Secretary of Agriculture did not want to go to the congressional hearing. And the Senate hearing was really much easier than the House session. Brooke Rollins said after the session that the Senate hearing went more smoothly than expected. Why? Because both Republican and Democratic members of the Senate Agriculture Committee asked much softer questions than the House committee. Most committee members did not vocally object when Rollins made statements blaming the Biden administration, but Warnock was the exception. USDA's own numbers, a 3% increase or cost of living crisis. Warnock came to the hearing with data, and this data belonged to Rollins' own department. Warnock emphasized that the USDA's own projections showed that market costs increased by about 3% last year and are expected to rise another 3.2% this year. These figures may seem modest at first glance, but then Warnock added one thing. The 3% increase is the average of a year's worth of price increases, but for some products the increase is much higher. According to Kiplinger data, the price of coffee has increased by approximately 35% since the beginning of last year. 35%. The discussion, which began with the significant increase in the price of morning coffee, indicated the general cost pressure on agricultural commodities. Rollins argued that the average increase in food prices was at the 3% level, and that during the previous administration this rate had risen to 20%, and attributing the responsibility to the previous administration, it was reported that Raphael Warnock hesitated in response to this answer. Still the Biden administration after 2 years? Is this your answer? This question was not just a political attack. This was a framing that questioned what accountability meant. The Trump administration took office in January 2025. Today is June 2026. This means the administration has been in power for more than 17 months, and the USDA's own projections show that food prices will rise in both 2025 and 2026. At what point does the Biden administration answer lose its validity? The answer to this question constituted the essence of Warnock's strategy throughout the trial. Rollins' answer, however, did not clearly answer this question. He said prices went up 20% during the last administration. Warnock's question was, in 2026 now, and prices are still going up. On what grounds do you justify a 3.2% monthly increase? 4.3 million people removed from SNAP. The honor of work. The second major front of the trial was the removal of 4.3 million Americans from the SNAP Food Assistance Program. Warnock pressed Rollins on this cut. Rollins' response was extremely noteworthy. Rollins said that no one was fired from the program and that the reduction was a celebration of work and an honor of work. The honor of the work. This sentence framed the removal of millions of people from the food aid program as an achievement. But Warnock immediately objected to this framing. She also brought up the decision to cut the $500 million support from the USDA for food banks. The situation is as follows. 4.3 million people were removed from SNAP. $500 million in food bank support was cut. And the simultaneous occurrence of these events means that the alternative channels through which people removed from the program could access food are also being restricted at the same time. Warnock summarized this mathematical reality as follows. You cut 4.3 million people from SNAP. At the same time, you cut food bank support. Where will these people go? Rollins' response turned to general principles instead of offering a concrete solution. We encourage working, he said. $500 million food bank cut, a state's consequences. To understand the tangible effects of this cut, we need to look at the data on the ground. After the announcement of the $500 million cut, panic spread among food bank networks. According to statements from Feeding America Network, this cut directly affected food banks operating in small towns and rural areas. These institutions are heavily dependent on federal support. In the case of Georgia, this picture was much more concrete. In Georgia, represented by Warnock, the population dependent on federal food assistance programs is extremely high. In every court, there were concrete facts showing how another cut would affect citizens. And Rollins' framing of the honor of work remained an extremely abstract response to this concrete reality. Warnock made a note of this point. There are also workers among these people. People working in low-wage jobs but still experiencing food insecurity. The dignity of work does not feed these people. The honor of work does not feed these people. New World screwworm, a new crisis threatening farmers. Another topic that came up during the hearing was the one Rollins highlighted before the Senate hearing. The New World screwworm. Rollins told reporters at the hearing, the food supply is 100% safe. This is not a disease, not a virus, a fly. But this just a fly explanation did not fully reflect the situation. The New World screwworm, a pest that can seriously threaten meat production by infecting American cattle, has come back into the spotlight with the reappearance of a species that the U.S. completely eradicated in 1966. It's noted that the Sterile Fly program will not reach full capacity until November 2027, which is considered an additional and concrete risk to the already economically pressured agricultural sector. Rollins said that active work is being done on the issue, but he could not give a clear answer to the question of when will it be solved. We need a few 100 million more flies, he said. He admitted that he did not have enough information about when this fly would arrive. This is not good enough. Warnock's assessment. At the close of the trial, Warnock made a single assessment of the entire situation. Warnock said, "We are tired of the this government, not that government game that Rollins is playing. You are in power now. Prices are rising. Millions have been removed from food assistance. Food banks were cut, and your answer is Biden's fault. This is not good enough." Rollins' last response, however, returned to the same frame. He pointed to the Biden era. He counted the averages, and he said, "It takes time. It's taking time. 17 months have passed. Prices are still rising." While it was noted that the United States Department of Agriculture's projections indicate an upward trend until the end of the year, Raw Story's assessment stated that Brooke Rollins has made blaming the Biden administration for rising food prices a fundamental political framework, and it was concluded that this approach continues even if the administration changes. Result? The heavy price of a sterile answer. The outcome of this trial was summed up in a single word: sterile. Warnock chose this word deliberately. He didn't say wrong, he didn't say lie. He said sterile. This word describes a technically correct but completely disconnected answer from the reality of life. The 3% increase may be mathematically correct, but what does that average mean to a Georgian who has seen coffee prices rise 35% and is trying to make a grocery list fit a budget? Rollins' answers were technically correct. During the Biden administration, prices really did rise much faster. The SNAP work requirement is indeed a defensible argument within the policy framework. But Warnock's question was not about these arguments, but about the distance of these arguments from reality. How sterile his answer is for someone trying to shop in Georgia. This single sentence made visible the point where political discourse touches people and where it does not. And Rollins' Biden administration answer emerged in its clearest form within the framework set by Warnock. 2 years later, still the same answer. Prices continue to rise. 4.3 million people were removed from the program. Food banks were cut. And the answer? The Biden administration. If you want to follow this type of analysis, subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications. See you at the next hearing.